Hello, Rainbow Dash.
A cheerful voice greeted. The Pegasus pony's eyes opened a crack, but widened as she saw it. It was Discord, riding a cotton candy cloud while lying on his back. Fluttershy trusted him, and the others seemed to be now willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But Dash still didn't trust him. He was the god of chaos, after all. He was probably just biding his time until they were lulled into a false sense of security.
Are you up for a race?
He asked. While normally she wasn't one to turn down a challenge, he had tricked her before in the past. And if there was one thing she hated more than losing or someone hurting her friends, it was being made a fool of. Instead of responding to his invitation, she merely glared at him. His grin turned into a frown.
Rainbow Dash, why don't you like me?
You're kidding, right? Discord shrugged while giving her a sheepish grin.
Well, let's see. You insulted the princess, you turned Ponyville into the chaos capital of the world, you turned all of us into jerks, making me abandon my friends, and you totally manipulated Fluttershy!
By the time she was finished, Rainbow was desperately trying to catch her breath.
You're right,
he admitted.
I've done all those terrible things, and I'm sorry.
He added the last part with watery eyes, holding his talon and lion paw together in a pleading gesture.
Can you ever forgive me?
She gave him an incredulous look. Did he really believe those little two words would make up for all the mental anguish and emotional turmoil he had caused on not only her friends, but the entirety of Ponyville?
You're some piece of work, you know that.
She grumbled, spreading her wings before hopping off of her cloud. Too much to her annoyance, her flight path was blocked when Discord teleported in front of her.
Oh, come now, Rainbow Dash. Princess Celestia wanted you to try and reform me, but you never even gave me a chance. Surely not the example one would expect the element of loyalty to set.
Don't you dare ever challenge my loyalty to the princess or any pony else!
She barked, causing Discord to flinch.
And second of all, if she really trusted you and believed that you could be reformed, then why did she cast a spell on the elements of harmony so you couldn't take them and hide them again, huh?
At this point, she was flying at a height that made her level to Discord's face.
Okay, granted that after being turned to stone for a second time, I may have been a little mad and turned into a bit of a wild card, shall we say. Those kinds of precautions made perfect sense, but now I'm reformed.
He insisted.
Really?
She challenged.
Yes, Princess Celestia even said, and I quote,
His face contorted to a point that was exactly the same shape and size as Celestia's and mimicked her voice.
I sense a great change in Discord.
Yeah,
Dash agreed, before butting her head against him so that they were nose to nose.
But she also left the elements with us, in case you do something crazy. Doesn't sound like trust to me.
Rainbow Dash, what can I say or do to convince you that I'm on your side?
Why do you care so much about me being your friend?
She challenged.
There are tons of other ponies in Ponyville. Why don't you go bug them for a change?
And with that, she flew off to do some cloud busting. She was so worked up from talking to him that she wouldn't be able to go back to sleep, even if she tried. Besides, she needed to blow off some steam before she made his face look even more messed up than it already was. What's wrong, Discord? The kind Pegasus asked, upon spotting the ex-master of chaos sitting dejectedly in front of her cottage.
Oh, hey there, Fluttershy.
He replied sadly.
It's just that I tried talking to Rainbow Dash today, but she doesn't want anything to do with me.
Well, Rainbow Dash can be a bit stubborn, but if you give her some time, I'm sure she'll come around. She replied encouragingly.
But all she and every pony else ever sees me is a master of chaos, and they're right. It's all I've ever known how to do. and I've never been very good at making friends.
Well, friendship isn't about just being around those you like or having fun. It's also about sacrifice, remember? Maybe if you tried helping her out with some things she's having trouble with, she'll trust you more.
Yes!
He exclaimed, picking her up and twirling her around with him.
Fluttershy, that's a wonderfully evil idea you've concocted in that sweet, sweet little pony brain of yours. I'll gain her trust by doing her favors and force her to be my friend.
What? No! Show her acts of kindness, like what I did for you.
Oh.
He dropped her.
Well, I suppose that might work too.
Scootaloo sadly walked through Ponyville, hanging her head. Not only had she failed another attempt at flying, but thanks to a stupid rock jutting out from the ground, she had lost her balance and her scooter was completely totaled. The only luck she had seemed to have that day was the fact that she was wearing her helmet. If not for that, her injuries would have been far worse than a few minor cuts and bruises. After the tumble, she felt tears welling up in her eyes, but willed herself not to cry, just in case some pony was watching her, especially if that pony was Rainbow Dash. Discord, who had been hovering upon his cotton candy cloud and musing to himself what he could do to gain Rainbow Dash's trust, spotted the disheartened filly below. She stopped walking when she noticed the sun-bathed Ponyville suddenly became much darker.
Great.
She muttered dismally.
Now it's probably going to rain too.
Looking up, she saw a puffy cloud and her heart jumped into her chest. Was it pink? Towering from the cloud above her was an odd creature that reminded her of the stone statue Miss Cheerilee had showed them during their class field trip to Kennerlot. She had called it a Draquanaquus, and said that it had a head of a pony and the body of all sorts of different things. But she had never seen one in person.
What's wrong, my little filly?
Asked the bizarre creature in a sympathetic tone. Scootaloo could only stand there in a stunned silence at the sight before her. A strange hybrid of creatures, floating atop a cotton candy cloud, had just spoken to her and asked her how her day was going. She stammered at the utter loss of words, and conflicted on what to do next. She was pretty sure that she had completely lost her mind, and that this was just some crazy hallucination she was having. But on the other hoof, if it was real, she still wasn't sure what to do. After all, Rainbow Dash was always adamant that she should never talk to strangers, and this guy was definitely strange.
Oh, where are my manners?
He asked rhetorically.
I am Discord, Master of Chaos. Or Ex-Master of Chaos, as it were.
He gave a bow while introducing himself. That name definitely rung a bell, and Scootaloo was suddenly on her guard.
Discord.
She growled.
Rainbow Dash told me about you. You're a bad guy.
Bad guy?
He repeated.
Well, that's a bit harsh, but I promise you I don't cause trouble for your beloved Rainbow Dash or her friends anymore. In fact, that's the reason I came to see if I can help you.
Help me?
She repeated incredulously. He nodded.
Now why don't you tell me? What has you looking so glum?
She sighed. While she didn't really trust this creature, it would probably feel good to vent, since she couldn't find Rainbow Dash anywhere.
Earlier while I was on my scooter, I tripped on a rock and it got totaled. I fell and crashed to the ground.
She replied.
Are you hurt?
He asked.
A little bit, but nothing serious. But my helmet got cracked when I landed on my head.
But you are a Pegasus pony. Couldn't you just fly?
He asked curiously. Her cheeks turned from orange to a deep scarlet as she shook her head sadly, causing Discord to realize that it was a painful subject for her.
Why not?
He couldn't help but ask.
Because my wings never properly developed. The doctor I was taken to said that I'd never be able to fly, and it's a miracle I can even hover for more than a few seconds.
You're very brave. Your parents must be very proud of you.
He commented.
I don't have any parents.
She replied, looking down at the ground sadly, tears welling up in her eyes again. This came as a huge slap in the face to Discord. This little young filly was a cripple and an orphan.
What's your name?
He asked.
Scootaloo?
She sniffed.
Scootaloo, don't you have any friends?
Yeah, Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle. They don't have their cutie marks, just like me.
She replied.
You know, Scootaloo, for a long time I felt like you did, like I had no purpose, that I didn't belong anywhere, and only recently did I discover that wasn't true. Do you want to be friends with me?
Mm-hmm.
She sniffed.
Here, let me give you something as a sign of our friendship.
He snapped his talon-like fingers together, and, in a flash, all of her injuries were cleaned up, and she was wearing a helmet with the scooter standing right next to her. Both were looking as good as new.
My scooter!
She exclaimed.
You fixed it!
Before he realized what was happening, the young filly jumped onto the cloud and embraced him in a hug.
Thank you so much!
But the celebration was cut short as a raspy shriek cut through the air like a knife.
Scootaloo! Get away from him! Right now!
It was Rainbow Dash, and she was streaking towards them like a rocket, before stopping short in front of them.
But Rainbow Dash?
She tried to protest.
Clubhouse! Now!
The Pegasus demanded, pointing in the direction with her hoof. Scootaloo hung her head and obeyed Rainbow's orders as she sadly headed off on her repaired scooter.
And you!
She snarled.
Stay away from her or you'll be sorry!
After her warning, she flew off in the same direction as Scootaloo, leaving Discord standing there, dumbfounded. When they arrived at the clubhouse, Rainbow Dash confronted Scootaloo.
Why were you talking to Discord?
She demanded.
I fell off my scooter and I was looking for you!
She exclaimed.
And then Discord showed up and fixed it for me. Fixed it?
Dash repeated incredulously.
He's probably the one that broke it. Why don't you give him a chance?
Scootaloo challenged.
Because he lies!
She exclaimed.
All he ever does is cause chaos and disharmony among ponies. And it seems like I'm the only one around here who hasn't forgotten that.
Scootaloo grumbled something.
What? Nothing.
Scootaloo replied indignantly.
What did you say?
She demanded.
I said maybe if you gave him a chance and actually listened to him, he wouldn't seem like such a bad guy.
Dash sighed.
Look, I'm trying to be really patient with you here, because I know you're just a filly. What's that supposed to mean?
She shrieked.
You think you can tell me what to do all the time? You're not really my big sister. I know.
As the gravity of what she just said sank in, Scootaloo burst into tears and began sobbing on the clubhouse floor. Rainbow Dash knew that the younger filly's words had no meaning to them, and that she was just upset. But her words still stung like the time she'd crashed into the hornet's nest.
I'm sorry.
Scootaloo sobbed as Rainbow Dash came closer to her.
Please, don't hate me. Scoots.
Dash replied softly, running a hoof through her mane.
I might get angry at you sometimes, but I can never hate you. And I'm sorry for yelling at you. I was just scared that something would have happened to you.
Scootaloo's head perked up. Did Dash just really say that she was afraid of something?
You were?
She stammered. Rainbow Dash nodded.
I'm gonna tell you a little secret. There's nothing in this world that scares me more than the thought of losing you. Rainbow Dash...
She sniffed, before throwing her hooves around her.
Is that really true? Of course it is.
She replied, returning the embrace.
You're my little sis.
Rainbow Dash and Discord were both inside Fluttershy's cottage, sitting in 2 armchairs next to one another, which was provided by Discord through his magical abilities. She had agreed to give this a shot, solely for Scootaloo's sake, and emphasized that for the both of them. While Discord seemed confident, Fluttershy was nervous that things would quickly become violent if they didn't work it out. As usual, Rainbow Dash herself seemed to have trouble sitting still, and was more than slightly annoyed at this idea of a therapy session. Fluttershy placed some tea down on the table in front of them.
I just made it. Be careful,
she warned.
It's very hot.
Why, thank you, Fluttershy. How very kind.
Discord replied, taking a cup. Rainbow Dash merely rolled her eyes. She did have to give him credit, though. He was sticking to this perfect gentleman routine pretty well.
Dashy?
She asked.
No thanks.
She replied, eyeing it suspiciously.
I mean, I'll wait till it cools off in a bit.
Okay, she replied merrily. Little did she know the true reason why Rainbow Dash didn't want the tea, or any other hot liquids for that matter, was because of what happened at the dinner party last time. Fluttershy sat in the armchair across from them in a manner that reminded Dash of a shrink.
Now then, let's begin with something simple. I want you two to compliment each other with one aspect you like about them. Dashy, you go first.
All right. She hated being put on the spot like this. How could she compliment him on anything? She hated just thinking about him.
Your voice is pretty cool, I guess.
She conceded.
Why, thank you, Rainbow Dash. I find your voice quite melodic as well.
She cocked an eyebrow. Seriously? Most ponies thought her voice was annoying and scratchy, often comparing it to nails on a chalkboard, and her friends never complained. But they never complimented her on it either.
Thanks.
Fluttershy seemed to ease up a little, seeing that they were actually making some sort of progress, and that her living room might actually make it through the day without turning it into a full-fledged war zone.
Now, why don't you two try talking to each other on your own, and I'll sit back and listen.
So, you're a big fan of the Wonderbolts, huh?
He began. This piqued Dash's interest.
Hey, yeah!
She exclaimed.
You know,
he whispered, leaning in closer to her ear,
that with the snap of my fingers, I could make you a Wonderbolt, or even the leader of the Wonderbolts.
Well, it is pretty tempting,
she admitted.
But I feel that my friends still need me around Ponyville. Besides, if I do get into the Wonderbolts, I want to do it all by myself. Blow their minds by being totally awesome.
Discord chuckled to himself. Not if, when. She certainly wasn't lacking the confidence. Rainbow Dash eyed him suspiciously.
What's so funny?
She demanded.
Oh, it's nothing. Now let me ask you something else. How did you and Fluttershy become friends?
I thought you knew everything about us.
She challenged smugly.
Maybe I do.
He replied mysteriously.
Well, didn't Fluttershy tell you that?
Perhaps she did, and perhaps she didn't.
He replied, grinning.
I want to hear you tell it.
Of course, no matter what her disposition may have been, Rainbow Dash's ego would never allow her to skip a chance to regale some pony in her feats of awesomeness.
Okay, When I was just a filly, I was at the Junior Speedsters summer flight camp. And as usual with every morning, I was flying around being awesome. Until I heard some voices. There were these two jerks making fun of some filly because she didn't fly very well. And that made me mad. Besides, I dealt with those jerks before. And I had to settle the score.
She added the last part to make the story sound 20% cooler than she thought it did.
So they challenged me to a race, and I totally took them both on and did the only ever sonic rain boom. And that's how I got my cutie mark.
She exclaimed triumphantly.
What about Fluttershy?
He asked.
Huh? Oh yeah. She kind of fell off her cloud after waving the starting flag.
She replied sheepishly.
But she wasn't hurt.
Dash insisted upon seeing the horrified look on Discord's face.
Besides, I was so far ahead I didn't see her fall. And I went back to look for her when I noticed that she was gone.
I was caught in a group of migrating butterflies. The yellow Pegasus spoke, causing the other two to jump, forgetting that she was still there.
Well, that was quite a story.
Discord admitted.
If you like these stories, then you'll probably like the Daring Do books, because they're all about adventure. And reading about adventure totally doesn't make you an egghead.
She spoke in a tone that seemed as though she was trying to convince herself more than him.
Anything you like to read?
Oh yes, I've eaten a few good books lately.
He grinned, fondly remembering when he first stayed with Fluttershy and how she commented on his paper-eating habits.
Hey, Discord.
Rainbow Dash spoke quietly, which was unusual for her.
I'm sorry about earlier and kind of being a jerk to you, but after everything else, you know how it goes.
I understand completely. No hard feelings.
He replied, extending his lion paw. Rainbow Dash reached out a hoof towards him and he shook it.
No hard feelings.
Now, I know that I promised to only use my powers for good, but I never said anything about pranking, did I?
He asked, quietly, as a mischievous grin spread across the Pegasus' face. That's when the horrific thought occurred to Fluttershy. Instead of Ponyville dealing with just Pinkie Pie's and Rainbow Dash's typical gags, the town would have to deal with their schemes being fueled by Discord's magic as well. Oh dear. It seemed impossible, but Fluttershy had managed to get all of her friends to give Discord another chance, and visit for another dinner party. Rainbow Dash even brought Scootaloo, which she found amazing. Having known Dash the longest, she was sure that convincing her to attend a social event with someone like Discord would be next to impossible. Yet, somehow she had pulled it off. After the first few baby steps were taken care of, Rainbow Dash and Discord began talking about everything from Cloudsdale to the Wonderbolts, to even the latest Daring Do novel. She was actually feeling very proud of herself, knowing that she had gotten her oldest friend and her newest friend to finally get along.
Welcome, Rainbow Dash, and hello there, Scootaloo.
He greeted. Scootaloo waved back with a hoof, before spotting Apple Bloom and Sweetie Belle and running off to catch up with them. Discord snapped his fingers, and mugs of the Apple family cider appeared before both Rainbow Dash and him.
I hear it's your favorite.
Yeah, and I've got a few prank ideas that I want to try out, but I'm gonna need your help.
I'm listening.
He grinned. They clanked their mugs together before drinking. The end.